When two cars come into contact in a massive crash in an intersection, either a Tbone type of accident or a left turn accident, the forces are tremendous. We see metal, steel, twisted, plastic breaking, glass shattered all over. But what happens to the person inside the car? The forces are just as great on their bodies. I'm Elia Castranova, an attorney in Los Angeles, California, and I represent people that are injured in Tbone and left turn types of accidents. I want to talk to you today about rib fractures. These are very common injuries in Tbone types of accidents or left turn accidents. Even though the occupant may be seat belted in a harness kind of seatbelt, the impacts are so tremendous that their ribs can be broken by the seatbelt itself, if not the steering wheel and the door on the left side of the driver's side or on the right side for a passenger. Rib fractures are the third most painful fractures according to medicine, after fractured thigh and a fractured tailbone. They are fractures that cannot be treated because there's no surgery that can be done to heal a rib fracture quicker. And there's nothing much you can do except for get a rib brace or rib belt to try to keep the ribs stabilized. Rib fractures can also be very, very dangerous because if it's a sharp fracture, it can pierce the lungs and cause what's called a pneumothorax or collapsed lungs. I've had many cases in my office involving rib fractures, including ones that have caused collapsed lungs. So when a person comes into my office with a rib fracture or with complaints of great chest pain and there's no diagnosis of a rib fracture, I make sure they get the right kind of treatment. We send them to the right kinds of doctors to either try to treat the injury or to diagnose the injury so it can be treated. So usually the types of doctors that treat the rib fracture are either thoracic surgeons, whose specialty is the chest, or pain management doctors. So if a rib fracture has already been diagnosed at the hospital through x-rays, then we know to send them to pain management specialists right away. Because even though you cannot perform surgery on these kinds of fractures unless they do collapse the lungs, you can get pain medical help. And we have just wonderful pain management specialists that have graduated from UCLA, from the University of Chicago, and other well-known medical institutions in the United States. And they can inject the particular area with painkiller if the pain is bad enough. Whether it's a single fracture or multiple fractures, as I said, the pain is very, very severe because every time you move, your ribs move. If you turn over in bed, if you cough, if you sneeze, if you laugh, your ribs will move and it will cause terrible pain. Rib fractures take a long time to heal too. They can take anywhere from a month to 6 months, and sometimes it's chronic and they do not heal. So once we determine what that injury is and confirm that it is a rib fracture, we let the insurance company know that this is a major case. You may not think that rib fractures can be compensated with a great amount of money, but they can, and we will, and we've done it. We've got numerous six-figure settlements on rib fracture cases just because the pain is so severe and it cannot be easily treated. I've had clients that have had permanent chest pain because of rib fractures. So again, these accidents that occur in intersections specifically, and where there is chest pain, when a client comes in our office, we want to rule out rib fracture, because that makes a big difference between what the client is entitled to for all the pain they're suffering. And many attorneys don't handle these cases, or they don't have them diagnosed correctly, and they're not doing a service for the client. We do, and we have, and we're there for our clients who have rib fractures. Rib fractures are often misdiagnosed because even on the best of x-rays, the articulation, the visualization of the bone is difficult to see. And you may have a hairline rib fracture that causes just as much pain as a complete fracture, and you can't see it in an x-ray. So that's one of the reasons why we send clients to specialists if they have had chest pain or chest trauma in an accident. Either a rib fracture or also sternum fractures, the bone in between your ribs. We've had many cases with that as well, and that causes great pain. I grew up in a medical family. My father was a surgeon for almost 50 years. And so we would talk about clients with these kinds of injuries, and he informed me early on the kind of pain that it would cause and how difficult it is to treat these injuries. So from the first years that I started practicing, I knew to look for rib fractures just from that background, and knew the value of those kinds of cases.